Viewer beware.
Welcome back to Viewer Beware. It's a series where we go over each and every episode of the original Goosebumps TV show. And today we have a very special episode. It's actually a two-parter of Stay Out of the Basement. And you know what that means.
Extra long episode!
Excuse me, I don't know what came over myself. Stay Out of the Basement is actually one of the first episodes that R.L. Stine wanted adapted into the TV show. It's because it's one of his favorite books that he had written at the time. Stay Out of the Basement is a story about a rogue botanist that breaks all the rules. In it we have vampire plants and David Cronenberg-esque body horror, as well as a dad that's possibly too abusive for his own good. Without further ado, let's crack one open and roll into that beautiful footage. We open to a mother leaving her children in the care of their father. Our main character, Margaret, doesn't feel safe with their father as he's been acting strange and hiding in the basement since he lost his job. The mom even says that he's trying to prove his job made a mistake by letting him go. Usually this would be a situation where you'd have to be wary of him stockpiling weapons.
I've given the best years of my life to this place and they think they can just fire me like that? Like trash?
But little brother Casey assures her that he only does this because he is a botanist, which, as we all know, the best place to study plants is in a dark basement. Despite Margaret's concerns, the mother is going to leave them alone with the dad anyway. The kids go to find their father and let them know the mom is leaving, but unknowingly, they just made a huge mistake.
Stay out of the basement!
He really yells at his kids like that, it's crazy. After his outburst, he doubles down on telling them that they should never go down to the basement. It's almost like it's the title of the episode or something. After mom leaves, the kids are enjoying their free time at home when Margaret hears a low grumbling noise coming from downstairs. Despite their dad's repeated warnings, they still decide to go into the basement. They descend into their father's herb garden and notice that they can hear the plants breathing, which if you know anything about plants, isn't normal. Margaret gets snatched by a plant that happens to steal some of her blood. As they are discussing the vampire plant, Dad pulls back into the driveway wailing on his horn to let the kids know he is in fact home.
Dad!
He immediately grills his scared children about going into the basement. Realizing that this approach isn't working, he just explains what his project is.
Botanists often try to take good qualities from some plants and put them into another.
And that's what you're doing?
No. I'm doing something a little bit more unusual.
Except he doesn't really explain anything and immediately goes back into the basement. The next day, Margaret spots her dad walking into the kitchen and eating handfuls of plant food over the sink, and then going back to the basement. She calls her mom to explain how weird Dad is acting, but the dad snatches the phone out of her hand to assure Mom everything's fine. And this is good enough for Mom. That night, Margaret hears odd grunting from her dad's bathroom and decides to peep on him. As we all know, this would be a bad idea.
He's coming! He's coming!
Instead of catching him straight up jorking it, instead she sees that he has a bandage on a cut on his arm that's bleeding green slime. He's also sprouting leaves from his head. She runs and hides in her room for the rest of the night and then tries to tell Casey about it in the morning, but he isn't hearing any of it. The dad calls the kids down for breakfast where Margaret spills the beans about the bathroom incident. The dad reveals he is trying to crossbreed plants with humans in the bathroom. He then serves up bowls of green slop to the kids and forces them to eat it. Luckily, they are bailed out by a guest from the university arriving, buying them just enough time to throw the slop in the trash. After this disgusting breakfast, the kids go outside to toss a frisbee. Casey overhears the dad and the guest arguing in the basement and goes to spy on them before a vine snatches his ass up. Somehow the dad teleports from the basement, arguing, to outside behind the kids and assures them they are just being crazy, and that the vine is a part of his work they had no business destroying. Later that night, the kids hear drilling coming from downstairs and find out their dad is installing locks on all of the basement entrances before he goes out for a couple of hours. When Margaret tries to call her mom, she sees that her dad took the note that had the phone number written on it. So she searches the dad's room and discovers his bed is full of earthworms. For some reason. The kids then decide they need to check the basement, so they grab a crowbar to pry off the lock and a canister of weed killer. While going through the basement, Casey sprays all of the living plants with the weed killer to hold them off. As the kids look through the plants, they actually see some human-plant hybrids. It's some top-notch body horror, especially for a kids show. I mean, Jesus, look at that! Oh my god! They hear a banging on the closet door and open it to reveal their dad, but he's tied up and looks kinda like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. The dad reveals he's been locked in the closet for days, and the dad that they thought they were living with is a living plant. After the kids untie him, he grabs a crowbar and looks like he's about to attack. The camera then turns to reveal that the other father is back and claims he's the original. Then we get a classic standoff: who is the original, who is the clone? The only issue is the kids are fighting them with weed killer. They could just spray both dads and the original would be fine because he's not a plant, so it's not really an issue. Eventually the tied up dad calls Margaret Princess, which lets her know he is the real one, so she melts plant dad. The next day, dad is clearing out his basement of all the plant-human hybrids and reveals that the issue started because he accidentally cut his hand and mixed his blood with the plants, creating this pod-person copy of himself.
It overpowered me. And I think that it wanted to make plant copies of us all.
Oh, man.
You know, when Aunt Eleanor was getting better, she asked me about you two. I said you were both growing like weeds. I never realized how close to the truth I almost was.
Everybody just accepts this logic and moves on to go grill up some hamburgers, while Margaret stays behind to tie her shoe.
Margaret. Margaret, help me. Please help me. I'm your father. I'm your real father.
Oh, I'm your father.
No, I'm your father.
I'm your father.
I'm your father.
So Margaret can hear her dad's voice in the flower bed around her house, meaning that his experiments probably seeped out of the basement into the surrounding wildlife. What this means, I don't know. If it were me, I would have had the ending that Margaret had her own doppelganger because she also cut her hand on a plant in the basement. And then the ending would be the doppelganger snatching Margaret away while she's asleep or something. That's spooky, but I digress. This probably could have fit in one episode. There were a lot of scenes that just kind of dragged on for no reason or didn't really add anything to the suspense or the plot. But the extra runtime was great because that finale where they go in the basement and see all the experiments was genuinely terrifying. Like, I got kind of scared watching it back again. And for that, I'm giving it 4 bumps out of 5 gooses. That's solid and respectable. Good job, everybody. But stay tuned, we're going to go over the whole series. Also on the channel, I go over some video games. I do some other stuff. I have fun. We have fun around here. Just have some fun with me. Just like and subscribe and we'll have fun together. Send me a DM and say, wow, man, that's super fun. And I'll be like, yep, sure was. I told you, I warned you. But get back to me. Right here. Keep it locked. Keep it tight. Keep it fresh. We're in on this together.